Podcast with John Impemba and Andrew Cooper.
What is going on, everybody? John Impemba here with Andrew Cooper, welcoming to the Quick Out Fantasy Football Podcast and live stream here on the Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm social channels. Coop, my guy, man, it's been a little bit. I've been off gallivanting around Europe for my honeymoon. Thanks to Howard Bender for filling in and helping out while I was away. But I am back. I am here, and we are talking a little NFC West preview here today.
Yeah, you know, we hung out while you were gone, dude, but it's back to get the true quick out fashion. No nonsense. I love Howard Bender. He's the man, but he does bring a certain flavor of nonsense to the pod sometimes. So we get it all done and we get it wrapped up in under an hour. That's why we call it quick outs, man. Yeah. So let's get in there. Shout out to listeners out there. Shout out to the folks in the chat. Albert gang, we see you guys. Feel free to drop some questions. We'll try and get to them. So Johnny, without further ado.
Like I said, we'll waste no time. But before we do, don't want to waste time, but Coop, draft guide. Got to give a little shout out to the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide. It is live every day. New articles are coming out. I've got a couple of quarterback articles out over the last couple of days. You got the RB questionnaire coming out today as well. And as you can see on the screen right now, the draft guide is free. If you have an all-pro subscription, you can sign up today. You got a 7-day free trial when you sign up. You can use promo code COOP to get the 50% off the first 6 months. You can use promo code NFL50 to get 50% off the first 6 months there as well here. And that includes access to the Fantasy Football Draft Guide and all of the great content that we have out there on Fantasy Alarm. If you don't want to sign up, if you don't want the 7-day free trial, don't know why you wouldn't, but if you just want the draft guide, you can buy it there as well. $26.99 to take advantage of the draft guide that is updated daily. The days of buying the paper print draft guides are long gone, Coop. All that information is old news. Those things that were printed, DeAndre Hopkins is still on the Cardinals, and Dalvin Cook is still on the Minnesota Vikings right now on those magazines. We don't know where they're going, but we will be able to update all of that information when those two guys sign. So get involved. Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide now live. Coop, my guy.
I want to say in the draft guide, you're going to get things that if you like the free stuff I put out, your mind will be blown by the stuff that's in this draft guide. Like some of the things that are proprietary that you're not going to see elsewhere, my RB questionnaire, my target totem poll, you have to check those out because it's the basis of my entire process. And if you like anything that I do in this industry, then you can not only see how that process happens, but you could take those things. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll send you blank copies and do it for yourself. And now you're getting to a higher level of understanding. But anyway, that's the draft guide. Get that going. John, let's get this going. The NFC West, the Wild West.
NFC West, we'll kick it off here with the, I guess, the best team in the NFC West here. That is the San Francisco 49ers, 13-4 last year. Best add during the offseason. They went and got defensive tackle Javon Hargrave coming over from the Eagles there. They lost right tackle Mike McGlinchey. If you want to look at some other guys maybe they added or lost as the biggest loss, that can certainly be debated here. Best draft pick, they took a kicker in the third round here, Coop. This offense here may need to utilize their kicker, Jake Moody, there in the third round. Vegas has their win total set at 10.5 at -145. They're the favorites to win the NFC West at -160, and their Super Bowl odds are sitting at +1,000. We're waiting for Brock Purdy to come back. There's still Trey Lance sort of lingering in the wings. Sam Darnold seeing ghosts again. I mean, there's a whole lot of things happening in San Francisco this offseason.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. This team, if you really think about it, they have arguably the best player at a number of different positions. And Javon Hargrave, if Aaron Donald didn't exist and within this division, he could be up there as well. I mean, Nick Bosa is in that conversation. Christian McCaffrey, we all are fairly agree that he's the number one running back. George Kittle is arguably the best two-way tight end. They have the number one fullback in Kyle Juszczyk. They have the number one tackle in Trent Williams. I mean, it's crazy. If they just figure out the quarterback situation, then this team would immediately be considered the top NFC team, in my opinion. Right. So, the offseason, they didn't really need to do much, but getting Javon Hargrave, I would honestly, I have them as my number one DST for fantasy football. John, do you have anybody ahead of them?
I mean, the Eagles, obviously. I mean, that
Yeah,
team.
they lost some pieces. They lost Hargrave,
They
right?
lost Hargrave, but then they loaded up in the
I
draft. I
know,
mean, the
yeah.
league just let them take, this Georgia defense, like
So
over and over
silly,
again.
dude.
So,
So silly,
I
man.
mean, I think the Eagles for me are still going to be right up there with the top defense, but it's going to be close. I mean, there's going to be some talented teams out there.
Cowboys are interesting too. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are some good teams, man. It's just this one, it's almost like, and then that's the thing for fantasies. You need the flashy, the sacks, the interceptions. That's where the Cowboys
You
come
look at
in.
the division too, right? If you're looking at the 49ers and looking at their division, like, okay, they got to
Yeah.
go up against the Rams and the Cardinals twice. Like, that is just easy pickings, right? For great DFS production and
It's
season long production too.
It's nice. Yeah. So to get into, so that's kind of what they didn't really do too much this offseason, lost Jimmy G, Sam Darnold.
Didn't
Who
have a lot of
cares?
holes, right? Like,
They didn't really, yeah. So, but for fantasy purposes, here's what we're looking at. This is based on underdog ADP. That's kind of the best ADP we have. The Scott Fishbowl, it's always interesting to look at, but because the scoring's so crazy,
yeah.
it really doesn't give you that much. So the earliest ADP that we really trust are those
Yeah,
expert
we're getting
leagues.
some early Yahoo ADPs now. Like, they opened up their leagues, so leagues are starting the draft. But I mean, like,
Get those.
you shouldn't be drafting your Yahoo league in July. So,
Right.
you know.
For Fantasy Line members, we do have our composite ADP, which
Yeah.
includes underdog and also has like FFPC. Those are the ones I'm looking at, right? The ones where the experts are in there paying $500, $300
Right,
and trying to win $1 billion, right? So we have those up there. We have what do we have? We have FFPC, NFFC, and Real Time Sports.
Yeah.
Those are pretty good sources because like Real Time Sports, if you want to draft on there, it's $300 and the winner gets $500,000. Those are very serious drafts. So you can add that ADP is real, but underdog right now, that's what we're looking at. You got Christian McCaffrey going in the first round, fourth overall on average. Oftentimes I see him go 3, sometimes even 1 or 2. Deebo Samuel goes at pick 35, wide receiver 18. Brandon Ayuk, ADP 51, wide receiver 28. George Kittle, tight end 4, but he's going at 62 after both the wide receivers. That's where the fourth tight end goes. So tight end a little suppressed over there. We all knew that. Elijah Mitchell, RB 41, ADP 124, a premier handcuff. And then Brock Purdy goes at QB 24, Trey Lance at QB 31. If one of those guys were declared the guy, they shoot up.
That's flipped. If you remember, Coop, earlier this offseason, you and I were talking about it, where Lance was actually going ahead of Brock Purdy. But there has been a lot of conversation since OTAs, from Shanahan, from Lynch being like, this is the guy we want basically to be our quarterback, assuming he's healthy. So even though those articles are written that Trey Lance is looking good, it probably was to try to boost his trade value and not necessarily an indicator that he's really going to compete for the starting job. So if Purdy's elbow is recovered from that UCL surgery and good to go, like, he's the guy, and he's being drafted now as the guy in this offense.
Yeah, he should be moving up. He should at least ahead of because right now he's going behind like Kenny Pickett and Jordan Love. Yeah. And as you know, those guys are locked in starters and they're fine, but they're not starters for this team, right? Sure. So that changes everything. After those guys, this team doesn't really have like a late round dart throw, like a last pick. I guess Jordan Mason or Juwan Jennings go, but because they use Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback, on so many snaps, really tough to have an extra.
Handcuff running backs are always interested in San Francisco because historically that rotation and the health of those running backs haven't been all that great. I know we don't like to play doctor over here, but I mean, last 3 years we've just seen Mitchell and Mostert and Wilson and you name them. They all just get hurt. Hasty, they all just get hurt, and a new guy steps in, a new guy ends up being rostered here. So Jordan Mason right now probably not worthy of a draft pick, but like if you're looking at your very last pick, like Jordan Mason could find his way onto the field this year at some point for the 49ers,
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing. I mean, he had like a 50-something yard run last year. They do throw him in mop-up time every once in a while, so it's not, they don't run CMC to the ground. When they were up big, I pulled the numbers as part of the RB questionnaire that's coming out today. But I pulled the numbers. I pulled the 2-minute drill numbers. I pulled the when the team's up leading with 5 minutes left in the game. There's a ton of different things I pull for this just to get an idea who's doing what. And Jordan Mason, with, when they were up with 5 minutes left in the game, he had a 50-yard touchdown run. So not crazy, but again, he's third on the depth chart.
I agree.
I want to skip to the prop bets because in talking about these guys, like McCaffrey, we love. In talking about the rest of these guys, I think the some of the individual prop bets for the players kind of paint a picture of what guys I'm willing to draft and what guys I'm not in fantasy football. So I'd like to actually just skip right to that part.
Yeah, let's do it. Listen, I think the thing that sticks out to most of me, you mentioned Deebo Samuel coming off the board, wide receiver 18, ADP of 35 over an Underdog Fantasy. But you'll go look at DraftKings Sportsbook. They have his receiving yards at 725 and a half. Now, the over is minus 130, but how in the world is he going to be a top 20 wide receiver with 750 receiving yards with Christian McCaffrey on the roster? So where's the rushing upside supposed to come for Deebo Samuel? Because that is what I would have to imagine fantasy managers think would be boosting his fantasy value to make him a top 20 wide receiver. We were right on this last year not to take him where he was going, and I feel like this is an easy fade once again.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, like, people are chasing that 1,400-yard season where he had all the carries, but that was a different team. It was a different world than what they're living in right now.
Right.
So when they set him at 725, and here's the real kicker, right? So he's going as wide receiver 18, and Brandon Ayuk's going wide receiver 28. So 10 wide receivers later, they actually have Ayuk set at 800.
Yeah.
So they're straight up saying that, I guess you have to add, if you really wanted to call it even, you do have to add like 100 rushing yards on there, or 100 plus.
Oh yeah, more,
and I'm not sure that's guaranteed. And the other thing is for best ball, fine, that's great and all. These guys like Curtis Samuel and Chase Claypool and of course Deebo can have spike weeks when they do have an end around and score, Tyquan Thornton. But in your redraft leagues where you're setting your lineup, boy, is it impossible to guess when that's going to happen. There's nothing, right? Yeah. There's nothing that tells us, okay, they're playing the Chiefs this week, I bet there'll be an end around. Like, that's not how it works. So it makes it so difficult to set your lineup. I guess if you draft Deebo, you're starting at his ADP, you're starting him no matter what. But just there's going to be some painful weeks there. So I'm kind of out there. The other one they have George Kittle set at 725, the same receiving yards number as Deebo. So if he hits that number, then you have the tight end eligibility.
Yeah, Kittle looks to be the most appealing pass catcher just based off the Vegas.
Right.
Total.
Yeah.
I'm full agreement with you there.
Again, here's the thing on Kittle. When I pulled the numbers when all three guys were healthy, and the leading target getters were Ayuk and Deebo up the top, over 20% target share. Christian McCaffrey right around 20%, and then George Kittle was down like 13% target share.
Yeah, listen, the addition of CMC, I know last year there was some things written out there that maybe they didn't think this would be a good spot for Christian McCaffrey, and I didn't really agree. And you and I discussed that on the show here. He was the RB1 basically since after following his trade to
it was RB2, but just by like a smidge.
by like a little bit, right, to the 49ers here.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy, if he's the quarterback, he's not Tom Brady, right? He is a game managing quarterback that is going to utilize Christian McCaffrey to the best of his ability, and the impact of McCaffrey in the passing game can't be understated, and I think we're seeing that in the receiving yards from these other guys here. It just makes me not like Deebo. It makes me not like Brandon Ayuk. Kittle, I don't find myself looking at a tight end in that range, but he's appealing based off the yardage. But McCaffrey is really the only guy in this offense that I feel comfortable with, which is odd to say on a team that is expected to win the division and be like a top 5 Super Bowl contender, right? So
yeah, I can't take George Kittle at his ADP or Dallas Goedert until Darren Waller starts going ahead of him, and I'm not sure that's going to happen because Waller could lead his team in targets.
Right.
So yeah, I look at that, man. And the last thing on the CMC part is that if you're a CMC fan, if you're a George Kittle fan, and especially if you have them in Dynasty, you are rooting for Brock Purdy to be the quarterback over Trey Lance. You should be writing letters saying this guy, because Trey Lance, we've seen it time and time again with these mobile QBs. They don't like to dump it down as much. They take goal line carries themselves. Of course, you're going to draw up plays for CMC, but those dump downs add up. So that's where I'm at on that. Let's look at some Super Bowl odds, and then we'll go on to the next team.
Yeah, so like I said, they're plus 1,000 to win the Super Bowl. Their over-under is set at 10.5, wins at minus 145 on the over. They're the favorite to win the division at minus 160. Brock Purdy's at plus 4,500 to win the MVP. CMC plus 8,000 to win the MVP. And then, as I mentioned, CMC's rushing yards at 900.5, Deebo at 725, and Kittle at 725. And you mentioned Ayuk at 800.
At 800, yeah. So that's here's the crazy thing about that CMC plus 8,000. For those that aren't super familiar with what that means, it means if you bet $100 and he's the MVP, you make $8,000, and that's the best odds for any player that's not a quarterback. That's how confident we are that a quarterback wins this award. Like Brock Purdy's odds are way better. You look at other guys that are at 8,000. It's like Ryan Tannehill. Like it's crazy how skewed it is towards QBs. I think it's kind of interesting to bet on CMC.
The only starting QB he's better odds in is Sam Howell. Sam Howell plus 10,000.
It's crazy, man. So I actually might. I mean, like, and if you look
if there's ever worth a dart throw, right? Like,
it is.
He'd be the guy.
Yeah, if you look at the defensive players, the highest defensive player for MVP is Micah Parsons at 15,000. That's the same as Blaine Gabbert. That's how like defense. There's no chance. There's no Lawrence Taylors anymore, I guess. So I like sprinkling that. I'm not going to bet on
1,000 season out of CMC, and they're like the best team in football. Doesn't he have a real chance at the MVP
on this team, especially if Purdy goes in there as just a game manager? But this team does, win the division or the best team in the NFC. Yeah, so I'm willing to sprinkle that. I don't like betting the over under because 10.5 seems like a reasonable line. And the over is set at -145. And if I'm betting on them to have 11 wins, a lot of times where I say is, oh, well, I might as well bet on them to win the division, but that's at -162. You're kind of laying too much juice.
I agree.
I don't know if I like any. I think if I'm going to bet anything from this team, it's CMC for MVP. And dude,
10 to win 800, right?
10 to win $800. Yeah,
10 to win 800. Exactly. Don't need to get too crazy with it. Let's move on. Maybe one of the more surprising teams in the NFL last year. We have the Seattle Seahawks here, 9-8 record last year. They added defensive end Vermont Jones from Denver. They lost Rashad Penny, but obviously they've addressed their running back situation in the draft. They also drafted Jackson Smith-Njigba with their second first-round pick. Vegas win total has been 8.5 at -165. Their odds to win the West are the second best at +195, and they're +3,000 to win the Super Bowl. Geno Smith last year shocked the world. I've said it a bunch of times here. I was in a super flex auction league, and I got Geno Smith for $1 bid. I nominated him for $1, and nobody bid me up on him for $1 in a super flex league.
That's free real estate.
There was a reason I won that league. Jalen Hurts was my QB, and Geno Smith was my QB too. So just a ridiculous grab for him. But the question now is, and can he repeat it? Can he do it again, Coop?
I know that you don't think that he can. I think that it's entirely possible. And I will say one of the stats is that guys that typically run as much as he did for as many yards as he did usually have more than one rushing touchdown. So there is a world where maybe he does take a little step back passing wise, but maybe he does mix in an extra rushing touchdown here or there. I will say this about this team. When I look at this offseason, this is a team that believes they can win right now. You look at what some of the other teams are doing, and one of them clearly, as we're going to talk about later in this division, clearly is not interested in winning whatsoever. The Texans last year were not interested in winning, right? But this team, they believe they can win. They went out and drafted another running back. They brought back Bobby Wagner, right, who is familiar with the team. But Bobby Wagner at this point is a hired gun chasing Super Bowls. There's no question about who he is. You do not sign Bobby Wagner if you don't think you can win right now. They signed Julian Love. They drafted another wide receiver to ensure that if somebody gets hurt, they got the dogs. So I mean, hey, the Seahawks believe in the Seahawks.
Charbonnet too, like they're building up their offense. So
you don't draft a running back if your window's, in my opinion, if your window's not open right now, then it's dumb to.
You already had Kenneth Walker. You didn't need to draft another running back, but you did.
So. Like the shortest shelf life position in this game, you did not need to do that if you don't think you're going to win right now. So yeah, I'm in on this team, and at least you can know that they're not going to quit on you, right? Because some of these teams, they turn around midseason and say, hey, let's try and get that last pick. With the Bears last year, clearly shutting down Justin Fields and doing what they did, they're like, let's get the last pick. And they did. So with this team, you don't have to worry about them shutting it down on you when it comes to championship time, when it matters most. Here are your fantasy relevant players. DK Metcalf, first Seahawk off the board at pick 28. So no Seahawks in the first 2 rounds. If they didn't sign Zach Charbonnet, that would probably be different, right, John?
Yeah, I would have. I mean, listen, Vegas still likes Kenneth Walker. We'll talk about that in a moment. Yeah. But yeah, you got to assume if there wasn't that hesitation now with the draft investment in another running back, that Walker probably would have been found. Same range where like Breece Hall's going in that spot?
He would be a second-round pick. He would be a second-round pick for sure. There's no question about it. I think he would be going. I don't see why he wouldn't be going where like Tony Pollard and Ramondre Stevenson are going,
Yeah,
I think he'd
that's
be
close to the same range there.
same range. Yeah. So right now he's going, DK's going wide receiver 15, early third round. Kenneth Walker, running back 16, ADP 52. So, there we're talking fourth, fifth round pick or so. Then next you have Jackson Smith and Jigba right now going one spot before Tyler Lockett. ADP 63 for JSN, 64 for Lockett, wide receivers 32 and 33. After that, you have Zach Charbonnet going RB 32, ADP 100. Geno Smith, QB 15, ADP 115. Regression or not, I think that's actually pretty decent. Tight end 32, Noah Fant, ADP 212. These underdog drafts are 218 picks. 212 means just someone saying whatever, last round pick. Nobody else is worth drafting. I think the next person being drafted ADP is Will Disley, and I'm telling you right now, do not do that.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, that's the case. We know who the main players are here. They all get drafted before pick 120 or so. They all get drafted within the first 10 rounds, but they're not getting drafted at the high end. So, John, talk to me about this JSN Tyler Lockett back-to-back move here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is kind of a little interesting. I mean, there's been nothing to really downgrade Tyler Lockett, right? I mean, he's been one of the more consistent wide receivers in that offense, and we saw him perform, what was it now, 4 straight 1,000-yard years, and that's with a change in quarterback. So it is a little surprising that you get the shiny new toy, and all of a sudden, he's expected to kind of see the decreased role, and they like JSN, and but there's still the chemistry. He's still a rookie at JSN is. So I feel like I would still take Lockett over him if I was making the play. We talk about Lockett's a dog, he'll play hurt. So he doesn't come off the field sometimes to the detriment of fantasy managers. But I mean, 100 targets in 4 straight years. He had 100 catch year in there, 1,000-yard seasons in 4 straight years while playing opposite of DK Metcalf, who's the clear number 1 on this roster. So I get why people would like JSN. I just feel like Lockett is the safer play.
I mean, I've seen Tyler Lockett go straight to the hospital from a game in San Francisco and then play the next week. So he is that dude. Pete Carroll, he doesn't care. So, and in underdog, which this is based off, it doesn't matter. I mean, you want the guy. It doesn't matter to you if the guy plays or doesn't. So, you don't care if he goes out and does that. So my opinion on this is I think Jackson Smith and Jigba, he is my number 1 dynasty wide receiver, but in redraft, I'm not taking him because I think he might take the Chris Godwin path here, where DK Metcalf is Mike Evans and Tyler Lockett is the Deshaun Jackson that is getting the full snap share, and JSN comes in to play in 3 wide receiver sets. But, when it comes to 2 tight end sets with Fant and Will Disley or whatever else, he's the guy that comes out. So I do like Lockett better. I'm not drafting JSN in redraft. If he turns out to be amazing and he's the next coming, then I have him in dynasty and I will draft him next year. So I'm taking a ton of DK Metcalf though. I think that when you look at his end zone usage, where he led the league in end zone targets last year, he's the only player that's had 14 plus end zone targets 4 years in a row. Only player that's done it 3 years in a row. So he is a end zone monster, and he got the same number of targets and essentially receptions as AJ Brown last year. It was just a matter of missed tackles. I got a whole article on that. Fantasy Alarm, just type Google machine, DK Metcalf, Andrew Cooper, Fantasy Alarm. That'll come right up, and you can check that out. That's a free one for everybody out there. That one's not in the draft guide. So that's where I'm at. I'm not really drafting much Kenneth Walker or Charbonnet. There's just other options, in my opinion. I don't want to play that guessing game.
The Charbonnet thing is interesting. I know our guy, Kev Tompkins, tweeted out how he keeps getting him in drafts, just keeps falling to him. Obviously, that's more of a handcuff play. I mean, Vegas isn't always right, but Vegas does have Kenneth Walker at a 950 rushing yard projection. Right. So if that's what the expectation could be for him, then where does Charbonnet fit in as a fantasy play if he's going to be the backup or the pass catching back, in this offense?
I think that's what it is, and I think that's what it's going to end up being. Pete Carroll said that Charbonnet has an opportunity to carve out some work in the pass role in the pass down, but he said Kenneth Walker's good enough that he might just take everything. So the way I look at it is Kenneth Walker is going to start on first down, and he's going to get the high leverage situations, and then Charbonnet is going to spell him, and if lucky, Charbonnet can carve out the pass down role where he plays in specific situations or when he's tired. But I mean, that is just a little. Do
you think it ends up being sort of like an early Pollard role where Zeke was still catching the football staying on the field, getting a lot of their work, and then Pollard would just find a series where, like, all right, Tony Pollard series here because Zeke is tired, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that's exactly what it'll be. Pass blocking at the end of the day will determine if Zeke gets all. Zeke.
yeah, right.
If Kenneth Walker gets all the work, if he gets a Zeke role, or if Chardonnay truly is like a pass blocking savant, then it could be split more like Chubb, Kareem Hunt.
Sure.
But either way, Kenneth Walker's probably safe. It's just in best ball, I don't want like safe. Like I've seen plenty of guys have 1,000-yard rushing seasons and just be okay. Like,
yeah.
But Philip Lindsay had back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, and he was whatever. Meanwhile, Austin Eckler's never had them. So I'm just kind of staying away from both
touchdowns
those guys.
matter, obviously, in fantasy.
Touchdowns matter. Yeah.
Listen, I have slowly started to come around on Geno Smith. I'm obviously not as against him as I was in the beginning, but I'm still skeptical. You know, he had a breakout year last year. But in a 5-game sample the year before, he kind of did the same thing, right? He had a 68% completion percentage. He had the 5-1 touchdowns. He was throwing more this year. He only averaged like 170 passing yards a game when he was filling in for Russell Wilson. He threw for 250 last year, which is where, like, I'm a little weary, but they invested in the offense around him. Maybe he's figured it out, right? Like you said, he spent a lot of time as a backup learning for the opportunity. Maybe this is the right system with the right talent around him, and he's able to succeed. As you mentioned, he's coming off the board as QB15, so you're not drafting him as a QB1 in most standard leagues. He's a QB1 in flex leagues, or if you want to reach, then sure, he can be your QB1, but like the risk isn't necessarily there. So I'm fine. I don't hate it. I don't love it. He definitely has the weapons to do well, but my question is, like, is he gonna do better than he did last year, right? Like, that's
right. It's tough. And Vegas setting the line at 3,900. I mean, man, they're expecting this team to be awesome, huh? But then the line
he threw for almost 4,300 yards last year with 30 touchdowns, 11 picks, led the league in completion percentage, and threw 572 times.
Right. So
it feels like he's maxed out to me. Like, I don't know.
Here's how I'm handling this situation. To be honest, I am drafting some Geno in fantasy. I'm not going to bet Geno to win MVP, even at plus 3,500. It's just, there's too many talented quarterbacks. And that's why I don't like betting them for the Super Bowl either. And the thing about the division is that the 49ers are so good that this team could win like 10, 11 games and not win the division. So I was kind of combing through the bet that, and you know me, John, I'm not a huge bettor. But I will bet if I believe in something. If I wanted to take advantage of this situation, what I believe this division is and what this team is, what I would do is go on DraftKings where we pull a lot of these odds and see how it says 8.5 wins over under minus 165, which is not enough juice for me. I would push it up to 10.5 and you can get plus 170 there. Where if they win 11 games and finish second in the division, which is, I think, fairly reasonable, then you make almost double your money, and that is worth it for me. So if I'm going to do it, if you believe in Geno, I think that's the best way to handle that. Because I mean, I've seen the thing about betting MVP that's brutal is, like, think about 2011. Matt Stafford threw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns, and he came in third behind Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers. So it's just so hard to win that award that if you're going to bet on any of it, I would just bet them to win 11 games, which is pretty reasonable, I think.
Sure. Vegas, our totals here, as we mentioned, 3,900 yards for Geno Smith at minus 105. DK Metcalf at 950.5 at minus 110. Lockett, as I mentioned, 4 straight seasons over 1,000 yards, but sitting at 875.5, and that's plus 100. So even money on the over-under on Lockett. Then you get JSN sitting at 725.5 at minus 110. And I said earlier, Kenneth Walker's rushing total at 950.5.
Yeah. So, but what that tells me, I'm actually kind of interested in betting the under on Kenneth Walker. When I bet the way I usually bet running back lines is because of injury. I look for ones where I like the under and then bet those because you also get injury benefit. When you're betting the over, there's no like additional way that you can get there. But with the under, if I don't think he's going to have 1,000 yards and he could get hurt, now I got 2 ways to win. It's like, It's like an open-ended straight draw, John. So like, I kind of like that with the wide receivers. What I'm doing with those lines is I'm drafting DK Metcalf, I'm drafting Tyler Lockett, and I'm not drafting JSN. In this one, I think the lines are set pretty appropriately. So I don't want to bet I don't want to bet any of those, but I look at it and I say, oh wow, DK Metcalf at ADP. Like think about who we just talked about. He's wide receiver 15, ADP 28. Debo Samuel's going right around the same range, ADP 30, 35 or so. If they're setting Debo at 725 and DK at 950, give me DK. They're setting AJ Brown at 1050 and they have DK at 950. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So some interesting yards there. For prop wise, again, Geno, 3,900 yards passing, did eclipse that last year. So Vegas thinking maybe they're going to be down, but you and I went over this scoop. Like Vegas seems down on a lot of props.
I like Geno. The thing is, I like Geno. I'm not betting that, dude. 4,000 yards is still a lot, even in 17 games. I mean, that's what Dak is set at. That's what a lot of these like the guys that routinely lead the league in passing are set at. So yeah, I don't know if I like that.
Yep, I'm with you there. All right, let's move on to the next team here on the list. It gets a little dirty. We have the Los Angeles Rams here, 5-12 last year. Their best ad ? To Marcus Robinson. I mean, they didn't really do much.
They sat out. They sat out free agency.
Right. They lost Matt Gay, so this is an offense that could be looking to kick a lot of field goals. They lost their starting kicker. They obviously brought in a kicker to replace them. Drafted an offensive guard with their first pick this year. Vegas has their win total at 6.5 at -105. NFC odds to win the West plus 1,000. Their Super Bowl odds plus $6,500.
How is that possible? Plus 6,500. I wish there was a way to fade that. I wish there was something I could bet to be like, there's no chance they win.
No chance. Yeah. I told you the Rams and the Patriots had the same odds. I was like, that's not good for the Patriots.
It's not good for the Patriots. Yeah. But I think that's too high.
Maybe all that good.
It's too high for the Rams too. And those are bad odds. Like the teams that are in that range are probably not winning the Super Bowl, but like, I know that it was Stafford and Cooper Kupp, that was the team and he dragged them all the way there, but they had other weapons still. Like even with they got Odell when Robert Woods got hurt. I mean, like they traded Allen Robinson, he's gone.
Yeah, I said Matt Gay was their biggest loss, but they obviously relinquished OBJ. Yeah. They didn't have Allen. They traded Allen Robinson. Baker Mayfield's not in there, which could matter because we don't know Stafford's longevity this season. And they got Stetson Bennett behind him. So Baker could be a big loss for this team if they don't really have a viable backup quarterback.
Yeah, they lost a couple safeties too, like Taylor Rapp. He's kind of like a hybrid safety linebacker. They lost him to the Bills. Nick Scott. The Bengals lost both their safeties, so they went and took Nick Scott, who he played pretty well against in the Super Bowl. So yeah, I mean, just kind of a weird situation, But I mean, like the Rams and the Cardinals, which are the last two teams we're going to talk about in the second half hour here. The beautiful thing about these teams is they are in the ghost chip mode, and there are fantasy gems that you can pull from these teams. Man. Right. So I actually think it's more interesting to talk about these two teams than the first two teams we talked about. Those teams, we know who the players are, right? Like here, okay, Cooper Kupp, ADP 4, right? So like Kupp, you got to pay if you want him. Cam Akers at RB 21, ADP 66. That's a guy we need to talk about. And then after that, after Cooper Kupp, who's going to be the guy? You got Van Jefferson, ADP 138, wide receiver 62, so he's free. Tyler Higbee last year somehow finished as tight end 6, despite having multiple zeros. Yeah, he had like one monster game.
Volatility at the tight end position, my friend.
Exactly. ADP 144. The thing about Tyler Higbee, man, is that he had that 30-point game where he had like 90 receptions for 90-something yards and 2 touchdowns. But the weeks leading up to that, he had multiple games where he played 70, 80, 90% of the snaps and put up zeros. Nobody in their right mind was clicking on Tyler Higbee's name to put into a lineup. So I don't care that he finished as tight end 6. Maybe in best ball he helped somebody, but he wasn't helping people in real leagues.
Right.
Matthew Stafford, QB 20, 151. If he is healthy, there's no two ways about it. If he's Matthew Stafford that we know, then that is a value. Like if he's just Matthew Stafford, like I just don't see a world where he can finish outside the top 20 if he's fully healthy.
Yeah.
After that, you're just taking stabs. They've got a rookie out of Penn State, Puka Nacua. He's Penn State, right? I think. Maybe not actually. So we'll have to double check on that one.
I'll pull it up now for you.
Yeah. After that, you have Zach Evans that they drafted, a running back, Tutu Atwell, the field stretcher that they drafted in the second round that hasn't done much, and Kyron Williams.
BYU.
BYU. Sorry, everybody. BYU
Same colors.
Puka Nacua. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what threw me off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know I actually like Puka Nacua. I wish he went a little earlier in draft capital wise so that we could hang our hats a little more on him. But I mean, stats like yards per route.
They're saying good things about him,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
coach speak season, so we'll see what's real and not real. But
right. And the name Puka Nacua, I don't know why. I thought he was a little guy before I actually checked him out. He's got a pretty good size to him. So he could play a decent amount. And then of course, Ben Skowronek is out there pretending to be Cooper Cup. But
yeah,
I mean,
he's
that's
probably not going to get there with Cooper Cup, back.
Let me ask you, John. Cam Akers. I mean, I did the RB questionnaire, and I got to tell you, he played the most snaps on rundowns. He played the most snaps on pass downs. When I was going through, I was even trying. I was like, use my imagination to say, like, okay, what snaps is he going to give to somebody? Is somebody going to come in and play pass downs? Is somebody going to come in and play if they're winning by 2 touchdowns?
They don't have anybody like Kyron Williams is still their backup running back here, so they didn't bring anybody in to challenge him per se. And listen, I'm with you. I've had a lot of Cam Akers in best ball, which is why it's concerning that Vegas came out and put his rushing total at 750 yards.
That's right, so, bro. He had what do you have? He had almost like 400 yards over the last 3 weeks combined. Like the last 3 weeks, he had legitimately almost 400 rushing yards, and they're setting him at 750.
Yeah, he finished 786 last year while missing games, while being benched, while being almost traded. And then he came back and, like you said, was a monster in 15 games, averaged over 4 yards a carry. The man's been good whenever he's been healthy. He just has struggled, obviously, with the injury there, kind of derailing him a bit. And then he had some weird disagreement with the coaching staff, but they seemingly are both passed on that. And he's heading into this year as their RB1. I don't think I'm going to stop drafting him, but I'm hoping maybe that ADP is starting to have him drop because they look at the Vegas numbers and people get afraid.
Yeah, I mean, that's I'm in, man. I'm willing to get hurt again on the Cam Akers train because I mean, they leaned on him at the end of last year. That's how they ended it out. I know it's a small sample size, but he looked like he was back up to speed, and that's what happens with an Achilles. It's like you have a period of time where you're not up to snuff, and then you get up to full game speed, and hey, who knows what happens. So I'm interested there. Before we go on to some bets here, after Cooper Cup, you got to pick somebody to be the second target on this team, John. Somebody that's on the team right now. I know they could add somebody, but who would you play your flag on?
I've been doing Van Jefferson. I mean, it's been 3 years now that they said this kid is coming, right? And now they cleared the way. No OBJ, no Robert Woods, no Allen Robinson. It is time, put up or shut up for Van Jefferson here. So that's the guy I'm willing to take a stab on.
Here's my thing with Van Jefferson is that he's a good player and he does a lot of things well, but he does nothing great. Right. Ideally, he'd be like your fourth guy, but we've seen him time and time again step in there and make plays and be serviceable. And I mean, when you really think about who he is, it makes sense that he would be just a well-rounded, good player with fundamentals because his dad is a coach. Right. His dad's the wide receiver coach for the Cardinals. So maybe he isn't the greatest athlete of all time. Maybe if another athlete had his dad as a dad, they would be a superstar in this league. Right. But the fact that we can count on him to be a professional and to, fill one of the 3 roles and be out there doing.
And they also didn't do anything again to bring somebody in, right?
Yeah,
so they're willing to settle on him, and I have no problem doing it at his ADP either.
Yeah. So I'm taking stabs there. Tutu Atwell, I mean, in best ball, I guess you could say he's super fast, and that's your
kick return point leagues.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think they just missed. I think they whiffed on that pick, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talk about it all the time. Small, fast guys, they have a hard time breaking through in the NFL. It feels like.
And the thing is, there's the disconnect between fantasy and real life is that a guy that is just really fast and makes the safeties run with him. That is valuable in real life football. Yeah. But you don't get any fantasy points when KJ Hamler.
You're not drafting Marcus Wilson. No. Who's the Patriots guy there? Is it Marcus Wilson? Is that who it is?
Marcus Jones or Tyquan Thornton?
Yeah, Marcus Jones. Yeah, you're not drafting safety, wide receiver, special teams extraordinaire, right?
He's fun. Yeah, he's good. He's a good real life football player. But you can't use him in fantasy, right? Unless it's IDP. But that's the thing with these guys is that they are valuable, and that's why some of them get paid a decent amount, but you don't get when this guy runs and takes a corner and a safety and it opens up Tyler Higbee underneath, you don't get any fantasy points for that. And the coach gives him an attaboy, but we don't get points for attaboys. So you got to watch out for guys like that.
Looking at some of the Vegas totes here again, 6,500 to win the Super Bowl. Over under set at 6.5, -105 on the over, -115 in the under. So Vegas kind of split here. Could go either way. It feels like with them, they're plus 1,000 to win the division. Stafford's plus 6,000 to win the MVP. Cup plus 10,000 to win the MVP. Akers again at 750.5 yards at -110, and Cup 1250.5 at -110 for him.
Yeah, I just think you're throwing if Cooper Kupp didn't win MVP, he won Offensive Player of the Year, right? When he had like the best fantasy wide receiver season of all time. Yeah. So I think you're throwing your money away on that, unfortunately. And it sucks that that's the way it is, but that is the way it is. So I'm the only thing I would consider betting here. I mean, you can't touch Super Bowl, can't touch division. But
Akers, right? Akers over 750.
I like the Akers. Yeah, I like betting Akers over 750. Which is crazy because I almost always steer away from running back over unders just because they're almost always baked in some sort of injury.
Yeah.
But I mean, I truly believe that he's capable.
That's a number he could get by the halfway point in the season, right? Like it's not even a large number. So
Scamper correct excuse me, Scamper's correcting us in the chat that Cooper Kupp was not just the top wide receiver, but the top fantasy player overall in all of fantasy football, which
that season. Yeah,
give him the award, Scamp. Give him the award. So I can't bet any of those. The over under, I'll tell you what, you out there listening, if you feel strongly one way or another, then this one, I mean, you can get plus
Akers
money.
Needs to average 44 yards a game for an entire season to hit over 750.
Yeah, that's no problem.
So if he stays healthy, he only needs to average 44 yards a game. Even if he misses games, he's probably going to average more than 44 yards a game for the games that he plays. So it feels very, very low. Again, I don't love season-long props. We talk about this all the time because I don't like locking up money for
time value of money.
Especially when it's at -110. It's not like that they're giving me plus 300 or something like that on my money here. But I mean, maybe over on PrizePicks you do it, right? You go find PrizePicks because they give you the 3-1, the 5-1. You kind of throw a few different props in there and see if you can kind of capitalize and make some money. But I really like the Cam Akers 750
when you log into PrizePicks, you use promo code Fantasy Alarm, right? Yeah. And they match you up.
Listen, I do the PrizePicks season-long prop article every year. We will for sure do that again.
Yeah, those are fun. Those are fun. And so where I was going with that is that at 6.5, you can get plus money on both sides. If you feel strongly, then in those situations, like they're asking you to bet on it, right? They want you to bet something. I just personally, I have a hard time putting together those wins, even if they beat the Cardinals twice. So I'm just staying away for now.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100% here. Again, that's what we got here for the Rams. We'll finish it off with maybe the worst team in all of football. I don't think that's going to be debated all that much here. We have the Arizona Cardinals, 4-13 last year. Their best ad might have been Matt Prater because this is an offense that probably won't score a lot of points. Get a kicker involved. They lost DeAndre Hopkins. Best draft pick. They took Paris Johnson in the first round. Really good offensive lineman. Maybe the best in the round.
Let me say something about that too. Is that I had them mocked to take Paris Johnson at 3, and they were able to trade back, collect some picks to 12, and then they traded back up to 6 and took him. So that was kind of nifty. I like how they maneuvered that. And the GM, whose name escapes me, is that former Patriots exec. So that feels like a little bit of a Belichickian chess play move.
Trade back, trade around, gain more picks. Yeah, exactly. Again, the rest of this doesn't look pretty good. Vegas win total set at 4.5, and it's even money on the over. So not great. Odds to win the West plus 2,500. Odds to win the Super Bowl plus 20,000.
Ooh, goodness gracious!
That is very poor.
Don't do it. Yeah, it's not worth it. Even if you're a Cardinals fan, man, you got to put your that's like that. You might as well buy scratch tickets. Like, seriously though, because this team's bad. And the thing is, they want to be bad. There's a difference between teams that we think just suck versus teams that are doing it on purpose. This team is doing a purposeful bridge year, right?
Right.
And so the GM's name is Monty Austinfort, That's the guy I was thinking of there. I like these guys. I like Monty Osborne. I like Jonathan Gannon, but they're going the route where you try and rebuild it from scratch. JJ Watt retired. They let their top free agents, Byron Murphy, Zach Allen, they just let him walk, right? They cut DeAndre Hopkins, and then they kind of are starting anew. So their plan is to tank. They're not going to have a quarterback for half the year. I would be shocked if Zach Ertz was playing if he's not 150% healthy, right? There's absolutely zero reason to do that. So that's what their plan is. Now, the thing about that is, and they drafted Paris Johnson, they drafted Michael Wilson, they took Clayton Tune, a quarterback later. So I kind of like those picks. But here's the thing about these teams is we've seen this before, and this is where the deep sleepers come from. And sometimes these guys hold on to the roles they get. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown, the perfect example. They let Marvin Jones leave. They let Kenny Golladay leave. They let Matt Prater leave to collect compensatory picks. Jamal Agnew. They let all these guys leave, tanking on purpose, getting these comp picks, and then he earned that role and he kept it.
Right.
And other times we've seen Robert Foster for the Bills, Preston Williams for the Dolphins. We've seen Terrell Pryor have 1,000 yards. We've seen Kenny Britt have 1,000 yards. When these teams tank, there's opportunity there. So some ADPs, John, you let me know who you like of these guys. Nobody's being drafted within the first 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Right. So pretty ugly there. 60 picks is 5 rounds. Pick 61, Marquise Brown comes off the board. Wide receiver 31. James Conner, ADP 85, RB 27. Rondell Moore, ADP 131, wide receiver 60. Then people start taking stabs on Kyler Murray, QB 22, which is crazy that he goes before Brock Purdy or Trey Lance, right? Like he might not even play half the season. You got Trey McBride, tight end 26, ADP 201. After that, people are taking stabs with a last pick on Michael Wilson, Zach Ertz, Keontae Ingram. So, but John, I mean, like those ADPs, incredibly affordable. So you have to mix in some of these guys. Who you like it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, obviously these ADPs that you're talking about are best ball. So more people are likely to take a Kyler Murray, knowing that second half of the best ball season is potentially going to be there for you. If you're in a redraft league, can't really draft either of those guys. You could stash Kyler Murray if you want, maybe with like your last pick in a redraft league, but you've obviously invested another pick and a quarterback earlier in the draft. If it's Colt McCoy or if it's
Clayton Tune.
Colton Tune, right? Like, I don't know. I don't think I like Hollywood here. He's got 800 receiving yards.
I like Hollywood.
Prop.
I like Hollywood.
Dude, James Conner is the one that is scaring the heck out of me. Vegas has him at 650 and a half rushing yards.
How's that possible? I mean, I guess he is very injury prone too. You have to, so it's going to be a bad team.
It's definitely baked in a little bit, but like that is a ridiculously low.
It is crazy. It is crazy low.
Because you could say Colt McCoy is the quarterback. I guess they're going to say like they're going to be losing too much, but like James Conner is going to just be a volume monster. Maybe they think he just gets involved more in the passing game than the running game, but
well, to put it in perspective, John, James Conner's missed time in every single season, but the last 3 seasons, he's still hit that number. He still hit. So the last 3 seasons, he played 13 games, hit 721. He played 15 games, hit 752. Then he played 13 games, hit 782. So even if it's baked in that he misses 3 games, he's hitting those numbers usually, right? And Kyler Murray's not going to be around stealing run plays. Even when he comes back, he's probably not going to run as much. So this guy is, and to the depth chart, there's nothing there. Keontae Ingram, like what?
So I just did it. I have him for 14 games. Say he misses time, plays 14 games, much like Cam Akers, to hit over 650 in 14 games. It's 46 yards a game.
Yeah, that's
he
incredibly
can't
reasonable.
run for 46 yards a game if he does, and that's only if he doesn't play a whole season. I took away 3 games from him. If he was to play, he plays a full season. He only needs 38 yards a game to hit over 650 and a half.
Yeah, I'm drafting him in fantasy, and if I don't get him in fantasy, I mean, I'm gonna bet that no matter what. Like I feel good enough that he can hit that number. He's gonna be. I mean, if he doesn't get that number, he'll be a complete nothing nightmare for fantasy football, or he'll get hurt. But I mean, I'm interested at that line because once you get to that point of ADP where we're talking about here, we're talking RB 27. Like, how many guys have the full role?
Right.
You're talking like Miles Sanders, Rashad White. Those guys are gone, and they're the kind of the last like clinging to hope there. Like after James Conner, there's nothing. So I'm willing to take him. I know you're out on Marquise Brown, but I've seen this guy get 15 targets in the game just last season. Full PPR, I think. I know
I guess for me, it's where you're drafting him, right? Like
wide receiver 3 range. Wide receiver 3. You don't mind him as a wide receiver 3 flex?
I guess it would depend on who else is in that ADP range. I don't have the full ADP pulled up, but if there's other guys, I know he's a wide receiver 1, but
yeah, I know. Well, the quarterback could be there. The quarterback play could be.
I mean, lots of things like that matters, right? Like it doesn't matter. We talk about this all the time. It doesn't matter if someone's getting 40% target share if the quarterback is trash. So, like,
Okay. Here, I got it.
Okay.
Let's play a little Marquise Brown or this guy. I'm gonna start with a couple guys going ahead of him. Christian Kirk or Marquise Brown?
Kirk.
Agreed. Ayuk or Marquise Brown? I think I like Ayuk.
Yeah, it's close, but Ayuk's on a better team.
This guy I definitely have had. Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
He 140 targets 3 years in a row. Deontay Johnson going wide.
Listen, I just wrote the late round quarterback article and I've written the tiers article, and I wrote up Kenny Pickett both times. I think Kenny Pickett is a very intriguing option this year, just where he's going in drafts, but it's also because of look where the wide receivers are going. George Pickens and Deontay Johnson are both going near one another in drafts here. Either one of them, we say it all the time. One of them, it's not exactly the Tua Waddle Hill thing from last year, but if Pickett's going as like quarterback 23 or something like that, and these wide receivers are going up there as wide receiver 30, something can't be right. So
and Ruth is going like tight end 7 or 8, So yeah, I'm in on that. Chris Godwin or Marquise Brown?
Godwin.
Yeah. Okay. So Godwin's going wide receiver 30. Brown is 31. So now we're into the guys that are going after Brown. Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think Marquise Brown over him personally.
Probably Marquise Brown. It's close. I mean, it's close, but there's for sure 2 other wide receivers ahead of JSN. So Brown I would take Brown.
You know what's interesting is now these next 3 guys, I think I might all take over Marquise Brown. Even though I said I like Marquise Brown at ADP, the next guy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, sure, the numbers.
It's Tyler Lockett, Michael Pittman, Treylon Burks.
I have a ton of Michael Pittman in draft.
Me too. Yeah. So, but here's where I have Marquise Brown in a tier ahead. Jordan Addison, Jahan Dotson, Mike Evans is in there. Kadarius Toney.
You have him ahead of Jordan Addison?
I think that Hawkinson might hold on to that second target share. I've been going back and forth on it, man. I really have, and I think Hawkinson might keep a good chunk of those targets, dude.
So I love that. I mean, you did the lightning round stream yesterday, and I was in chat just popping around. Like, I love Kirk Cousins. I think this is going to be a breakout. I say breakout year, but like I said, he's had a 4,500 yard passing year. He's had a 35 touchdown. The connection he had with Hawkinson, the fact that Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football, and Addison is a far more athletic, explosive player than Adam Thielen ever was. We got here. Don't fall for the Addison hype.
I know that's Dustin in the chat, and I talked to Dustin about this because Dustin went to the combine and the draft. It's tough with So I think to put it nicely, I think Dustin believes that Addison might struggle with the playbook and advancing to the
the NFL level.
Getting to the
NFL. Definitely happens.
Right, at least short term. So but you're right though. I mean, his upside is higher than Marquise Brown.
This offense, what did we talk about with the offense last year? Right, they're going to throw more. They're going to do more downfield. They moved on from Dalvin Cook, and while Madison can certainly fill into those shoes, like it feels like they're just going to put more on the shoulders of Kirk Cousins here. So, you're not wrong. Again, we're
going to do one of these shows for the NFC North. We're going to do an entire show on it. So let's just wrap up the Cardinals, and then we can talk about Kirk Cousins. All right.
That's true. All right. So what other guys in this ADPs for?
Dude, it's crazy because you and I, we were out on Rondale Moore kind of from the start. And the problem is that he's so small that he's not ever going to he grades out terribly in run blocking. He's never going to be a good run blocker. But last year when DeAndre Hopkins was out, he did play 95% snap shares. There was times where he was just playing the whole game. And if it is going to be a go ship, for redraft, I'll consider him. In Dynasty, I still don't like him. And I think that this is the perfect sell high opportunity. In Dynasty, right now, he's on the hot seat. If he doesn't do anything this year, then you better sell for anything because the whole plan is to strip it down, get a good draft pick, and then rebuild it. And if Rondale Moore doesn't do anything during the strip down version, he's going to be in big trouble during the rebuild version.
Would you rather Brandon Cooks or Marquise Brown?
Oh man, Brandon Cooks in best
And
ball.
Brandon Cooks, by the way, is going 25 picks after Hollywood Brown. So I'm just wondering, like,
Yeah, I guess the ADP's high, but I mean, I don't know. The thing is, he's gonna get peppered, man, with targets. The one guy I am interested. The last guy I'm interested from this group is Michael Wilson in Dynasty.
yeah,
Or I guess Michael Wilson in Dynasty
could
because
be a guy this year, right? Could
yeah.
be a guy that plays this year.
Well, the big thing is that is him. The big thing is him because he has 4 inches and 30 pounds on the biggest of Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore, and Greg Dortch. So if you take all their heights and all their weights and pick the tallest and the heaviest,
Yeah.
he's 4 inches and 30 pounds bigger than that number. So he is the split end of the team as of right now. And I guess the last thing for fantasy that I'll say before we just hit the betting on the end is if you are in a super flex league and you can throw Clayton Tune on the last bench spot, the very last one, just to see if he starts week 1. We've seen guys like Davis Mills have some value, a little quick flip move. It could be worth it. And then if Clayton Tune doesn't end up the starter week 1, then you know who you're going to drop for the waiver at. So last bench spot guy, Clayton Tune.
How are you approaching tight end quickly? Ertz or McBride?
I like McBride. I think Ertz is a watch list guy because, you know,
the injury.
But the thing is, he knows Jonathan Gann. They played together with the Eagles. So maybe he does end up being a guy, but like he's a guy that he should go undrafted and then you can add him off waivers. That's what I'm thinking about. That's what
all right. Vegas totals here again. Not that we're going to be touching much of this at all, but Super Bowl odds are plus 1,100. Over under is 4.5 at plus 100 on the over, minus 120 on the under. To win the division, they're dead last, 2,500. Kyler Murray for an MVP is plus 15,000. So he comes back, second half of the year and leads them to the promised land. James Conner, as I said, just shockingly 650.5 rushing yards, and Hollywood Brown at 800.5 rushing yards. So that's what we got. Those are the listed props I could find on DraftKings.
So I want to bet the under, but there's an interesting narrative I've been thinking about, and it could be really kind of wild down the stretch, right? Because everyone talks about this college kid, Caleb Williams, right? Is it Williams or Will? It's kid. It's like he is supposed to be the number 1 guy, and everyone loves him. What happens at the end of the year when they bring Kyler Murray back? And the narrative is this: if they lose those games, they could draft his replacement. So he could end up coming back and playing.
I think that's happening because this is a new coach, it's a new system. Kyler's obviously had his issues within the organization. And that's how Kyler Murray ended up where he was, right? They brought in a new coach, brought in a new system. The coach is like, this is the quarterback I want for my team. Kyler Murray's there. Could very well happen with this whole new thing here, or they move on from Kyler as well, even though they just gave him the new contract.
If I'm Kyler Murray, though, and I come back healthy, I'm not going down without a fight. I'm firing away. I'm not going to the Oakland A's just yet, baby. I'm coming down. I'm trying to win those games.
If I'm Kyler Murray, do I want to hang around for a rebuild in Arizona, or do I want to go somewhere else? You know,
I don't know, man, but I'm playing to win. That's because not only you got to showcase why someone's going to give you a shot, and you're playing. You want the team to end up with a 5th pick. You want to make it as hard as possible to replace you. So that's the only thing stopping me from betting the under on this team, because I do think they're the worst team in football, and it's on purpose.
I would agree with you. They're definitely the worst team in football there. So that wraps up this week's Quick Out Fantasy Football Show here again. Coop and I will be back next Wednesday breaking down another NFC team here. Again, go check out the Fantasy Football Draft Guide. It's now live. Sign up for an all-pro subscription. Get that free. Use promo code Coop. Promo code NFL50. Get 50% off the first 6 months. Includes access to all of our content and our premium Discord included there as well. Guys, good luck. We'll talk to you all.